Bonus round.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to Bonus Round, episode of Double Tap, where we talk shop about fighting games in between podcast episodes. This week, we got myself, Crash, holding it down, but I've got Ja as well in the building. What's going on, sir?
How you doing?
Welcome back. And actually, welcome back, not just you, but our returning guest this week. Feel free, like he had a lot of fun last time, wanted to come around. So nice to do it twice. Mr. Aaron David Harris is in the building.
What's up, y'all? What's up? How y'all doing?
Good, sir. Good. Glad to have you back. Guess you just have more to talk about, huh?
First of all, I'm back just because y'all are some fun folks to be around. So anytime I can be here, that's what I want to do.
Appreciate it.
But I'm actually also back to let you and the rest of the Double Tap family know that your boy is a Podcast Academy Award nominee. If you remember when I was here before, thank you. When I was here before, I was promoting my podcast, Tales of Fists and Fireballs, a fighting game inspired audio fiction podcast, anthology podcast. It was on, I found out on Valentine's Day. I'm riding to get my wife a couple of flowers and some candy. I had to stop and pull over.
Make sure she don't listen to this episode. She don't know that. Like, nah, baby, I had this a week ago.
I was stopping and I get this notification in my email and I'm just like, what? Not just because of the nomination, but because the people I'm competing against. We're talking Amazon projects, Audible projects, Netflix projects, Dragon Age for some of y'all who was getting down with EA and Dragon Age. That's where your boy is at. So I'm that little engine that could. Every time there's an Academy Award nominee, there's always that one in there. You're like, how the heck that person get in? That's your boy this year. So
that's what I like to hear. I mean, for those who haven't checked out, the nominees include cats like Zack Snyder. I think Owen Wilson was in there. Some Aaron Paul projects are in there. I gotta take a look. I got a chance to take a peek at who you're up against. But just in true fighting game fashion, being the underdog, the story that we want to hear, the story that we want to see happen. Congratulations, sir. I'm super stoked to
Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you all for listening. I know I got a little bit of a spike for sure after I did my first episode on Double Tap. That was definitely helpful. So people say the FGC, we stand by each other. I got proof.
There you go. I appreciate all our listeners out there who checked out the last episode to check out Aaron and his work. Maybe by the third time he comes around, he'll be like, now I'm, award winning.
We'll see.
On it. We'll see the before, the during, and the after. We'll see what happens.
I'm going to build on this regardless. So
good. So yeah, guys. So this is, of course, bonus round. So we've got some topics that we wanted to get into. So I'm going to give you guys a quick brief real fast. So fighting games have been around for decades, right? It's just been around forever. Yet they remain one of the most compelling and unique genres in gaming. Like there's just something raw and personal about them. It's just you and your opponent, battle of the minds, reaction, execution. Some people play them casually, which is absolutely fine. Want more people to be playing them more, actually. Some make a career out of them, right? Some of them somebody just made $1 million out in Capcom Cup 11 just the other weekend. And others are just around for the love of the culture of fighting games that surrounds them and what it kind of symbolizes for them. So today we're diving into really what makes fighting games special and why so many people get drawn to them. I know it's like two kind of big topics, but we're gonna have plenty of opinions here and kind of views on what we got going on for it. So let's start off the rip. So at its core, what makes a fighting game? It's like a simple question, but I can guarantee you all three of us gonna have probably a different answer or a slightly deviated answer from it. Aaron, what about you? What you think? You're on the hot seat since you're the guest.
So for me, a fighting game is, first of all, it's something that is fun. It's not necessarily this thing that is supposed to bring a sense of anxiety or stress. We do that when you're talking about money or fame or prestige, but at its core, just like every other sport, football, baseball, basketball, a fighting game is a competitive experience between, usually it's two entities. In football and basketball, you're talking teams. In boxing, in tennis, you're talking individuals. But you do have that element of here's one side, here's the other side.
Us and them. And we don't like them. We don't like them. Whoever them is,
now,
we don't like.
It depends. It could be a respectful thing, like a chess match.
Oh yeah,
it could
absolutely.
Be a respectful thing.
Absolutely.
It could be I'm the Ryu. I'm here to improve myself, and this is an opportunity for me to get better or make a connection or learn something about life, the martial arts ethos, right? So you could have that, or you could just be the Mortal Kombat of, I just want to brutalize somebody. I want to hurt somebody and brutalize somebody and destroy them, because that's what gets me going. That's what gets my rage up or whatever. That's how I handle my business. I got some other issues in my life, but I can sit down and take it out.
I just want to destroy you completely.
Exactly. Now that's from a surface level perspective. Like a fighting game is just a video game where there's one guy over here, another guy over here, and we find out who's gonna be standing last at the end of that exchange. Yeah. Right?
Who still got some health? Yeah.
Power.
Exactly.
Now again, what is health? That'll be a different discussion. Is health a power bar? Is health a percentage? Is health a stock? Is health? You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of different.
Yeah, it comes in different forms.
But then that sort of muddies the water in terms of the question of what is a fighting game. Go ahead. I had some other things I was going to add to that. What I was going to say was, with most gamers in and of themselves, because there's a societal part of this. With most gamers in and of themselves, like today, games are cool. Today, nerddom is cool. Anime and gaming and comics and graphic novels and manga.
It's a great time.
But I'm an 80s baby, 90s kid. Okay, I'm an 84 baby. I'm a 94 kid. That means when I was playing Street Fighter 2 or Super Street Fighter 2, that wasn't the captain of the football team wasn't playing that in 1994. The captain of the
you ain't telling anybody you was playing, but you ain't even made. Yo, he playing games over there, here.
Right? So what I'm saying is, gaming was a at all levels and at all games, it was sort of this treehouse. It became a treehouse, and like all treehouses have rules and structure. And so sometimes when we're talking and you hear these arguments about what is a fighting game and what isn't, it's the changing of the treehouse rules. It's, well, a fighting game should be this, because that was my comfort when I came home from school and I didn't have any friends. And this was the way I viewed it. Well, no, a fighting game is this thing over here. A fighting game can be this over here. And you can get into those sorts of arguments. But that came from a societal place where this was we were the outcasts who were playing this fighting games, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I mean, I think on my side of it is it's the rawest form of it. For me, that is a fighting game. Like you said, still definitely in the grounds of what you said, is competitive, right? Because that's, for me, I grew up on arcades, right? Arcades was just what I knew. And arcades was nothing more than you standing next to the person you are supposed to defeat. That's it. That was just the rule of it. And you had to pay for that, right? You had to put your quarter in, 50 cents, $1. I'm sorry for those that had to pay $1. But, you know, to feel that bite in the pocket, to actually have a chance to conquer an opponent, right? So for me, like, fighting games definitely encompass just heavily on the competitive side, because that's like just all I knew. The community that grows around it, which we'll get into later, it was just a byproduct of that competition, right? But really, like, what are some of the key components, like, in a game for you that are like check boxes for you to be like, it needs to have this in order for me to consider it a fighting game? Because it could be a very, like you say, it could be like it's kind of like a societal idea that gets put there. But there are still, like you said, there are rules at the end of the day. I'll give you mine real quick. It's easy. Health bar. You know, you have two characters, one for each. Health bar, and resources to beat your opponent. That's it. You need those three. A deviation of that or additions after that is like nice to haves, but in its core, that's what a fighting game is.
A fighting game is a full experience to me. Full experience. As soon as you hit that power button to turn on your console or throw in that quarter, you get that main screen and there's a press start. And then when you press start, you can either go through, and if you're at a console, you're going through the options to go to versus mode or arcade mode. Or if you're at an arcade yourself, you press start, you go straight to character selection screen. Character selection screen you cannot call yourself a fighting game to me if you do not have a character selection screen. I think we gloss over that a little too much.
That's pretty strong. That is pretty strong. Take that for granted, right? That wasn't a thing till Street Fighter 2.
It was not. It was because that's where bonds get made with people and characters. When you say Blanca's my character, when you say Sub-Zero is my character, when you say that Ruby Heart is my character, you're saying that because you can open up this big pool of characters to select that you then are bonding with and learning combos with, or learning strategies with, learning even little things like the different palette swaps and changes about that character. And you start digging. Yeah. So the character, that doesn't happen without a character selection screen. You must have to, in my mind, you must have a character selection screen with all of the fixings to be able to choose who you want to be, who you want to invest in. And then go ahead.
So I was gonna say, so but just be very clear here. You know, if you're picking Blanca or Sub-Zero, I tell you to leave my house. Don't pick up the controller. It's the first thing I'm doing. Just letting you know. No, but from what you're saying, just like as a part of the character select, I think is like what you're trying to state is like kind of like the ability to have player expression through your characters, right? Because we're talking archetypes, we're talking different play styles, right? That someone will obviously has to connect to in order for you to say to have that fighting game.
Exactly, because once you have that character selection screen, then you branch out into those other. It's the jumping off point for all the other fighting game experiences you're going to have. What sort of archetype is that character? Remember, we used to erroneously call Ryu and Ken and Akuma Shoto characters. You remember we used to say that it was the wrong.
Anybody that got a fireball, a dragon punch, or even some sort of like quarter circle back kick move, you're a Shoto nowadays. It's a hot debate. It's a hot debate with certain characters.
But that started off the okay, here's your Shoto characters, your charge characters, your grappler characters. That all stems from what you're able to choose and why you chose it at the character selection. Something else that I feel, this is a personal thing, I feel strongly about the way a way you accept a character from a fighting game into your life. The music. Yes. The music. Yes. For me, I'm looking for the full experience. When I'm in a training mode, I remember the music. I'm learning, it's hard for me to disassociate the rhythm of a combo and the rhythm of a character and the music that character is associated with. It's hard for me to disassociate that. When I'm doing do 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 do, and I'm on that Ryu, I am immersed in how I can perfect getting the true fireball, that half circle fireball. How can I create the perfect low kick, high punch into, transition into the half circle fireball? I associate that with the music I'm listening to as I'm training with the character or playing with the characters. That's interesting, because that's low key probably one of the more, like, unless you'd be surprised how many people I've talked to or I've like introduced maybe fighting games in some degree and have gotten back to me and been like, yo, what's this track that I heard? What's this song that you had? I'm trying to add it to my list. Like, it's super underrated at times. It's because it's also crazy because, like you said, fighting games have been around for decades. So for us that have been around it, it's just second nature. Like, yeah, we know this rendition. We know this beat. We know this bop, right? This two-step to this. But it's actually like the more I like listen to it, the more I realize, like, oh, for me, it's not abnormal, which I definitely have it on my Spotify, a list of just, or a playlist of just fighting game music
from all kinds of corners of the fighting game scene and fighting games in general. Absolutely, all corners. Yeah, it's so interesting that's how this, but you're not wrong, because next to just how the culture is, like the music is a big component to it.
It's also indicative of to me, it's indicative of a fighting gamer's commitment, that they know. If you know the music to all 8 of the original characters in Street Fighter 2, that means you've played that game for multiple hours. Like, think about that. You're memorizing 30. You've had in your head 30 years of each of those 8 characters' theme musics, and it wasn't because you downloaded them somewhere and were listening to them. It was because when you were a kid, you sat and played and played and played.
You heard it on repeat. You heard it on repeat because you played so many rounds. What do you think's playing in the background?
Yep. So to me, it's indicative. There's a subconscious level that that music will. That's why I always felt like Mortal Kombat was like a little step lower than Street Fighter, even within this, because they don't have that.
Yeah, outside of like the Mortal Kombat movie track, the movie track, and a couple, the album from there, and a couple of the tracks here and there. Like, what can you give me Scorpion's theme beat right now?
No.
Sub-Zero's, Liu Kang's, nobody. I can't either. I can
name more Tekken themes,
but I could definitely do the movies.
I can name more Tekken themes.
Endless Azure, Tekken 5, Dark Resurrection end credits, classic banger, right? I could just knock them off just like that.
It's so again, and it's not just that today you could go to YouTube and just listen to all of them. Today you could go to Spotify, but when at the inception of those games, when you were playing Tekken 3, right? The music from Tekken 3, you know that because you were playing those games over and over and training and going to training mode and trying to do the 10-hit combo and trying to do the juggles and trying to like figure out a way out of the juggle. And, you were in it. And to me, that when you embrace that part of it, it's, again, I'll go back to the word experience. The full breadth of a fighting game is when this from the time you press the power button on your console or put that quarter into the arcade system, hit the press start, you're in character selection, and you're going through that list and trying to find who your guy or gal or non-binary pal is. And then once you've made that selection, the choices you make with that character, the strategies you choose to employ, the combos you've practiced over and over again, the commitment to, if you lose, I'm gonna go back to that character because that's my guy, that's my gal. The full experience. That's what I mean by playing a fight. That's why that part means so much to me. The character selection.
So with that actually, because you kind of touched on it just then, you kind of said the magic words, the mind games, right? Like at the end of the day, you are still trying to face somebody. So you got mind games and adaptation, right? 2 key components to it. The fight's really happening in your head half the time, but is that another checkbox for you? Because we're talking reading your opponent, conditioning, mix up, layers, right? Sometimes it isn't even about winning. It's about pressing the most, not even about pressing the most buttons, it's about pressing the right buttons at the right time. Like, is that as much of a key component for you?
Am I pressing the buttons on the controller or pressing the buttons of my opponent?
Both. It's gonna have to be both. Well, I mean, the buttons on your controller will flip something to your opponent.
Well, I mean, okay,
right?
You're saying mind games. Are we talking like talking trash? Are we talking?
No. Well, I mean, it could be. There's both in-game mind games and definitely
that's what I mean.
Out-of-game
that's
mind
what I
games
mean.
to start
That's what
with.
I'm saying. It depends on. I guess it depends on the environment you're in. If you're when you were playing at the arcades and somebody stepped up to you, what's their words exchanged when you were before, during, and or after playing people?
Oh, bro, we can spend the rest of this episode talking about that. It could be everything. It'll vary from hey, good luck. Nowadays, hey, good luck. You got your fist bump or whatever. To like, you about to lose. Like next.
Yep.
Yeah, like talking to the boys like, yo, this will be quick. I've had everything in between. On top of that, just straight up, other words I'm not about to just yell out here.
Yeah.
Before we even hit start, like everything.
Okay. The reason I bring that up is, it depends on the motivating factor of why you're playing the game. I can tell you my motivation when I first started was because I wanted to play my cousin's Super Nintendo. He's like 5 years older than me. And as a kid, I didn't have a console growing up. He did. He had a Super Nintendo. He had Super Street Fighter. I wanted to play it. He wouldn't let me. He told me I was trash. And then his mom, my aunt, said, let him play. Let's let him play. And then she let me play. And of course, I'm going to get beat up because I don't have the game. And then he said, see, I told you you're trash. And that hurt. And then I got older. And then I started working at GameStop. And remember, I told you my story about working at GameStop, and I got really good.
And then every family reunion. Gets
well,
lit.
I got really good. I got really good at like all fighting games. And then I got older, and I went and stepped to him again at a summer camp. And he was a counselor. He was a counselor, and I was a junior counselor. And I wanted to play. And you know what he told me? He said, "No rookies allowed." And then his friend said, let Aaron get a couple of rounds in. Let Aaron get a couple of rounds in. So I go in, and it's Capcom versus SNK 2. But he knows that he beat me. He used to always beat me up in Street Fighter 2. So you know what he did? He configured his controller to play with Bison the same way he used to play on the Super Nintendo.
Oh,
he told me that's what he's doing in front of his friends, most of his friends. I'm okay at this point because I'm ready for that. I'm okay at this point. But you know what got me? What got me
all these years?
What hurt me was just as we were about to start the game, his phone rings, and it's his girlfriend. And I paused the game, thinking, okay, talk to you. He's like, don't worry about it. And so now he's beating me up while talking on the phone with his girlfriend. That's what hurt.
I'm gonna keep it a buck. I thought this story was about to go somewhere else. I thought this was about to be the revenge plot or revenge plots. Please tell me you're still training to work.
I got him later, much later, when we both had kids. But at that point, it hurt so bad. And so for me, when I play games, it's mostly to make sure that I don't make a fool of myself. So it's not, so to answer your questions about mind games, I'm more like defensive. I just want to make sure that the person that I'm playing against respects me. That's really what it's about. My cousin, I know he loved me, my friend, he's my one of my best friends, but when it came to games, he was ruthless.
Yeah, you know what it is? He was ruthless. That's what I mean about the sense of competition that is so fun. At the end of the day, it's all love. Right? It's all love, whatever. But I have gone to countless tournaments. And I've had to face friends that I've driven to the tournament with to knock them out and then proceed to still drive them back. Boy, is that a quiet drive home. Bro, is that a quiet drive home? But some will get it. Like as soon as the rounds, the unwritten rule is as soon as it's round start, fight, heaven and hell, begin, whatever the game says that's about to start to let you let loose, it's all up. Once it starts, you are my number one op. Like you are enemy number one. I don't care about what you said to me before. The goal is I'm here to beat you. But once it's done, shake hands, or you get to take the salty 5 minutes. That's fine. It's cool. 5. Nobody talk to him. Nobody say good game. Nobody touch him. Nothing. Just let him walk. After that, we cool. It's all out of the sense of competition. That's all it is. And you really
only see that. That's why I think there's such a bond within the fighting game community. You really only see that in sports. You know what I mean? You see that in athletic competitions. You don't necessarily see that in any other competitive scene in gaming, really. I guess if you want to talk about the Madden games, you really don't see that level of the simplicity of it's me versus you. It's not a team. It's not a, you know what I mean? The simplicity of
that emphasizes it like crazy because there is no one else to point to outside of, the nuances like, hey, 2v2 games, Street Fighter X Tekken, Tekken Tag, 2X coming out, right? Like outside of that, like, it could still be a 2v2 thing. Whereas then y'all can both argue on the drive home for that. But past that, yeah, it is. There's nothing else that you can put it on aside yourself. So it's like you just have to give your dues, your respects there, or your kudos there.
And then they creates great, like, even though they're painful memories, they're great memories of my cousin's phone ringing and getting on the phone and talking to his girlfriend.
There you go.
And beating me up.
That's something you're gonna be telling your kids. That's something you're gonna tell his kids, and be like, yo, you won't believe what your daddy did to me.
The dude I told you about when I was calling myself weird names like Undefeated of the East, and Ludacris came in there and whooped me up. Like, it's I can smile.
Please listen to the last episode we had Mr. Harris on to get some context.
Yeah, go to that's a throwback to the previous episode. I like that. But it's a great story to tell, and fighting gamers will get that. I'm not the only one who was running the table on people, and then somebody walked into the bar and cleared out the sheriff. I'm not the only one
that's like a rite of passage. Everybody's got a pocket story like that in some sense,
and especially everybody in fighting games. Like, in our community, we all have that, and we can name the character, we can name the combo or the move that was done. We
can name the
mistake that was made that got punished.
When the light hits you in your eyes and you hit the wrong button, everything. You can figure out what you had to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner that night. You know everything.
And it creates. I don't know if we're all the way there yet, but why we all still love fighting games like that is because you find your rivals, you find your friends, you find your brothers and sisters. Hell, you might find your husband or wife in that way. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And it's a different kind of competition where everybody, whether you're an athlete or whether you can be disabled or whatever, if you have the ability to use your hands to play the game, do you have the ability to make that connection with another human being who also has committed themselves similarly to you to fighting games?
Yeah, well, so we kind of did like somewhat transition over to it, but I mean, yeah, one of the more fascinating things about the fighting game scene, or fighting games in general, is how they draw such a wide range of people. You said competitive players, casuals, artists, content creators, even those that just, like I said, enjoy the culture. Like, why is that? I mean, one of the things we're just touching about is, like, right, the competitive drive.
You could go, to me, I actually go back to what I was saying about the character selection screen. That opening of the screen with so many characters. I'm thinking about Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and it's 56. I think it was 56 characters.
54, 56, something along those lines. Right up there.
And the ability to be able to say, not just
a combination of the three.
First, you could find somebody who's just your guy, and then you could say, this is your team, and your team could be for me. I'll be honest. When I was playing when I was playing X-Men versus Street Fighter, and I would play, my team was Cyclops and Cammy, and I would always say,
yeah, that's cheap.
I would always say, like, man, one day when I get married, I'm gonna find my Cammy. You get what I'm saying? That's how I connected it. Like, I connected it like, I'm gonna find my perfect match, and I saw that my perfect match through the lens of playing a crossover fighting game where you found and you found a good complementary partner. You know, you could do the same things in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 when you have this huge selection of characters. I'm gonna build my family here. This is me. This is my cousin. This is my uncle. You know, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Definitely putting it, like, because at the end of the day, whether it's just a team or one character, you're gonna make that connection. And it's funny that you talk about it in team games, because especially in the Marvel scene, it's like you can pick your one guy, right? Your one character you're just like about, and you can pick the rest of your team to support that character, and people will know your team, but don't know specifically you by, like, that's the Spider-Man from Philly. Like, you guys, Dr. Doom or whatever, but they know him. Shout outs to Gio Run out in Philly. Know him as the Spider-Man from Philly, because that is just his guy. Might not be not a lot of people's, but he's that dude when you see Peter Parker on the screen.
Yep.
Right. So with that, like, do you think, like, the because it gets, like, really, you're talking about team games, so we're talking skill ceiling gets kind of crazy
does,
at that point. But you think that skill ceiling is like kind of what also makes fighting games like appealing, or do you think it's like it's more on like it will scare people away more often than not? Because a lot of people, especially in the last couple of years, especially considering how much attention has been given to fighting games with great games that have come out, with Street Fighter 6, with Tekken 8, with Strive, with Project L on the horizon, Dragon Ball Fighters, right? Like major IPs that are just getting into it, right? And people are instantly going like, no, like, I'm getting it from both sides that fighting games are just too difficult. But I've talked and seen countless other competitions for other games and been like, there's similarities, but I don't know if it's more difficult than the highest level, Jazz in the room, so I have to say it by obligation, Unreal Tournament players, or anything like that, right? Like, I don't think so. I just think what it is like it exceeds in one area with just like the amount of thinking and not thinking, because yes, that's what I mean. It's really difficult to pin down. I just think the actions, like on the execution, has always historically been the biggest component there. But it's still, I feel like it doesn't drive people away enough to like to scare them away from being involved.
Go ahead, Jared. I'll weigh in. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I feel like one of the big technical differences between fighting games and other competitive games, which, I mean, when you talk about competition, you're generally talking about shooters. Now you can also be talking about MOBAs or something like that. Yeah. But one of the biggest differences, and this is from a technical perspective, right, is that with a fighting game, I guess you can also kind of count this as part of my definition as a fighting game, all of your mechanics are internal to the character that you pick, right? Everything is internal. Like, the stage in 99.9% of fighting games does not matter, right? Everything is a part of your character.
Looking at you, Injustice. Looking at you, Injustice.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a nice little bonus to look at. You know what I'm saying? But like, yeah, let's say with a shooter, because actually it's funny. Every time somebody mentions like, oh, well, shooters are team based, shooters are team based, like it's like, okay, well, you really don't understand that shooters started competitive as 1v1, like Quake and Unreal Tournament and stuff like that.
Doom.
But a lot of them, the mechanics of it, though, are not necessarily internal to your character. Actually, at that point, none of the mechanics are internal to your character, right? It's about the gun that you pick. It's about knowing the level. It's about knowing the timers on the level. It's about understanding all the dynamics of the entire like level and your character together. Now it's a little different because we have hero shooters. So sure, you have a lot of internal mechanics, but at the same time, I still have to understand the dynamics of the map so I know what to do, what places, and how to do my spacing, and how to so for example, Overwatch. I always use Overwatch because I've played that game a ridiculous amount. But as a healer, one of the important things you need to do is know how to see your target in terms of healing them while also hiding from your enemy at the same time. You know what I'm saying? So like, those are what I would call external factors to your character. But with fighting games, I think one of the defining features is everything is internal to that character. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. But like I said, that's more technical than what the feels Aaron gave. Much better answer than mine.
So Derek, what happens when we're talking about fighting games and difficulty? And what I found, it's two things being mixed together and muddying the waters. You have playing the game, and then that's one side, and then you have the execution of a move. There's two completely different things. What do I mean by that? To perform a fireball in Street Fighter, a Ryu Street Fighter game, it's the quarter circle and a punch. To perform a fireball in Super Smash Brothers, it's picking Mario and pressing B. And so the idea would be, oh, well, it's easier to play the game that Mario is using one button to press to do a fireball than it is for you to play Street Fighter and do a quarter circle punch. But it's not that one is easier. It's just the execution of the move itself is different in one game, one fighting game versus the other. But there's a conflagration, there's a muddying of the water that makes it assume that a complex a complex button combination equals a complex gaming experience. Does that make sense? So,
absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up Smash and Street Fighter comparison, because like, a keyword here being accessibility factor for a lot of people, right? It's like you said, one button versus a quarter circle to do a fireball, to do a move. One person they'll be like, oh, the button is easier. But I mean, fundamentally, when you look at it on a competitive sense, I know, hey, I don't know if I'm about to do taboo or anything like that, but hey, love to Smash players. I don't care what anyone else says. They are part of the fighting game scene, even if we don't see them at places like Evo and all. There is an insane amount of execution that aren't even in some of the higher profile fighting games out there that blows my mind that people do this on a regular. Like
in Smash. Yeah. Listen.
In Smash. Yeah. One button presses mean nothing. Ledge guarding, one framing, they got Kara cancels. They got plenty of those techniques in there. It gets just completely overshadowed because they think, oh, it's a platformer and such, like, right, it's a different flavor of fighting games that it doesn't go to
the MomoCon in Atlanta. That's what I'll tell everybody. Go to the MomoCon in Atlanta.
Yeah, there you
Atlanta, it's, in my mind, Atlanta has like a crazy fighting game scene in general, but specifically Smash Brothers.
Absolutely.
I personally, and maybe there's some other places that are like that, I've never seen a more dedicated. When I go to the MomoCon and I'm watching those tournaments happen every year, they're still playing freaking Melee, Yeah.
Melee. They still playing 64 out here.
So and are good, like very good. So I've never discounted it. What I will say is I do understand the angst of a quote unquote traditional fighting game player who has committed the time to, particularly a Tekken player. When you're talking about doing like those God punches that from the Machina game characters, where you have those neutrals that you have to wait and do, and you have to decipher that.
Star.
I understand.
I don't see star on my controller pad. Where's the star button at? Look at 15 minutes. I think I gotta bust the controller. I don't got a star button. This is crazy.
So
I'm gonna talk to mine later.
So I understand on one hand you've committed that at a very important level in your life as a teenager.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
And now you
get a very impressionable side.
Yeah, and now you get older, and they're telling you there's still this mixture that doing something with one button means that there's less strategy or less skill involved than doing something that takes 8 different steps to complete. Right? That's not true. It's not true. But the optics. If I just put on the screen, here's how you do a fireball in Smash Brothers. Here's how you do a fireball in King of Fighters. If I just put that on screen, the optics make it look like the other game is this simple thing. When, as we just discussed, it's not that at all. But at the same time, like you just have to understand that both worlds exist within the fighting game community, or all those worlds exist within the fighting game community, and that's a good thing. It's not, I understand, I was going back to the treehouse thing, that's a good thing. That's why when the Sparking Zero stuff happened, when we were you want to know my hot take on Sparking Zero?
All right,
you want to know my hot take on Sparking Zero? If for those of you who are listening and not maybe seeing this on screen, Aaron is a black guy. He's a nice, bald, golden brown skinned black guy.
How long have you held on to this information?
I know I haven't don't really emphasize it, right? I'm a black. Unfortunately, in the black community, we have this thing called colorism, where we measure somebody's blackness based on how light or how dark they are. The treatment that Sparking Zero got was akin to basically calling Sparking Zero the light-skinned brother in the room. That's how people treated Sparking Zero. That Sparking Zero was, he's black, but he's Steph Curry black. He's Russell Wilson black. That's how, again, I don't have a problem with that. I'm saying the perception that people give, you're not really part of us. You're not really, because where's your power bar? Where's the opposite side of the screen? Where's the stock or where's the combos? Where's the round one ready fight? Where's all the stuff that the field slave has, but you're a house slave? You know? I don't know if you know that history, the difference between the field and the house slave. That's how a lot of people treat Sparking Zero. A lot of people treat Sparking Zero like that, and especially at the start. Again, I know this is wild. I didn't mean to set us off like that, but it's what I thought.
That's all good. This is what we.
It's what I thought about.
This runs deep.
It's what I thought about. Go ahead.
No, let me add to that a little bit, because I understand what you're saying regarding like the field slave versus like the house slave, right? And I think that you have to like dig into the fact that the FGC wants fighting games to be big, right? They want to be like, because I will say this, like being good at fighting games, like if you go 1 and 2 at a tournament, I say congratulations to you. You know what I'm saying? Like that's difficult because you're playing the sweatiest of the sweats. When you go into a tournament, okay, out of all the people that play fighting games, if you can win 1 match out of 2, congratulations. So I feel like a lot of fighting game players want their work to mean something, right? They want the recognition and they want to be able to, somebody to see them playing a fighting game and winning and doing well and not just like shrugging their shoulders, you know what I'm saying? And I think the problem that people have with not people, but like fighting game community have with Sparking Zero to a degree is that they want their fighting game to be big. They want the Street Fighter to be big. They want the Guilty Gear. They want the Tekken, the Soul Calibur to be big. But here comes Sparking Zero, which is, this, more accessible fighting game, you know what I'm saying? And people love it and it's getting all this attention and they're not really feeling it. So they feel like, and going back to your analogy about the field slave versus the house slave, they feel like Sparking Zero hasn't had to do as much work as their fighting game to get the recognition. Like, if you do something cool looking in Sparking Zero and you throw a TikTok up on that, you might get a lot of attention on it. But, let's say moment 38 now, the average person watching that is going to have no clue what they did, why it's a big deal. If you turn the volume off, there's no reaction. But there's only going to be a reaction because they know people freaked out when it actually happened. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's like, it's like, oh, you didn't have to work as hard to get where I got. So I understand the sentiment. I think you're wasting your energy.
Yeah, you are, because like you said, it's about, so you get what I'm saying, man. Like it should be about growing as the accessibility should not, if you're looking at accessibility as a threat to you or a threat to fighting games, that's not it's not a problem. Obviously it's not a Sparking Zero problem because they're making money. They've drawn the money, right? So it's more on, are you willing to embrace what is happening and then use it to the advantage? You like Sparking Zero, here's this Dragon Ball Z Fighter. And then that's a little more, and then if you like Dragon Ball Z Fighter, then here's Guilty Gear.
Here's all these other games. Absolutely. That was the side that I was on, where like when the Sparking Zero thing happened, I didn't care, because it was, the idea is this is a possible bridge to make more people come to us. We don't want to be an island.
You don't.
It's the last thing you want to do. If Sparking Zero represented the continent where we're an island and they're gonna build that bridge, let them build it. Because like you said, fighters, Guilty, Project L, right? Like the accessibility part has been something historically companies have been trying different methods of fixing, or rather improving upon. Right now, Project L / 2XKO is the latest one, but there was already one that's been out that's actually been on the ground and has had the best comeback ever, which is Grand Blue. Grand Blue has simple inputs to lower the accessibility for anyone that's a fan, with some nuances in a sense of like, if you're now going to take this to competitive, there's a trade-off. You're going to trade execution for consistency, or you're going to trade off, execution for consistency and maybe even damage, right? But that's the point. It's supposed to be a give and take. You can't make it lean too far one side, or else anybody can be a Daigo, right? Like that doesn't make it that doesn't create those moments anymore. It has to be those pivotal moments that create the moment 37, 38. the 15-year-old kid Blas that just got second place in his first ever Capcom tournament, just making it out there from Chile like a weekend ago with Ryu, Mr. Vanilla, Mr. I literally am as stale, as dry as it gets in all these characters, but I still made it to the top.
That's something you mentioned earlier is the actual problem. I think that fighting games are going to, really all games, but specifically fighting games, are going to run into. It isn't that the mechanics are not accessible, it's that by trying to make things too accessible, or not too accessible, by trying to make things accessible, these companies are going to lean heavily on established IP. And by doing that, we take away. When was the last time there was a fighting game not based on a anime or a manga or another video game franchise? When was the?
I mean, there's plenty that happen all the time. Skullgirls is a perfect example that's had the longest streak. That was the most original. It was completely
how many years ago was that
aspect
originally created?
Skullgirls is like 2011. So, yeah, it's about 14 years now.
There are others like Arms. Do you want these Arms? Would you count that? Like some of the independent indie stuff like Rivals of Aether. Indie stuff.
Rivals of Aether. But like,
if you're talking, and I mean, maybe that'll be the trend. But in my mind, I feel like original stories are always going to be king. Original stories are always going to be the driving force behind the why something stays alive. I think IP serves a great purpose for opening up doors. You have Sparking Zero.
IPs gets it to consumers for sure.
But I think that the reason why we have a fighting game community is because of Street Fighter, which is an original. It was not anything else before it was a fighting game. And I feel like we don't have enough original fighting games with original characters at the top of them. We always talk about we want to give different people their voices, diversified voices. When I think about like African American characters in fighting games, we all get kickboxing, boxing, up till Leroy in Tekken. You did not get like a legitimate one of those fighting martial arts styles. Like even Terry Bogard, who's supposed to be this Southtown street fighting, he still has like the list. I can't pronounce it. It's like 8 syllables long, but it's a fighting style that was taught to him by an Asian master that bought Tung Fu Ray. It was taught to him by a legitimate martial artist that he then blended that with his natural street fighting abilities, and now he's basically John Cena in fighting games. Like I would like to see some original stories from fighting games. I would like to see some original characters from fighting games where you get to see those kinds of things. And the more we lean on IP, the less likely we'll see that happen.
Chances, because you don't have as much.
Yeah.
You don't have, because it's set. Yeah. It's already established.
Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Like, absolutely. That's why I bring it. It is difficult. It's because it is a very high bar to do, especially when you are up against IPs that are, the Street Fighters, your Tekkens, your Mortal Kombats. These transcend just fighting games. These are cultural icons that people just know around the world.
Snoop Dogg is
right?
a huge fan of Tekken. Huge fan of Tekken. And like black people in general have a very loyal, just like when Jordan Peele made Get Out, you remember the movie Get Out, he made that in part because like our sensibilities, as much as we love horror, our sensibilities weren't necessarily being reflected within the genre. I feel like there needs to be that in fighting games. I would love to see, not just for black folks, but for all different cultures. I would love to see.
It's definitely an avenue.
But again, if we're heavily on 2XKO and League of Legends stuff and Dragon Ball Z, and if we just go to the well of IP, it's easy. Yeah, it'll draw a buck. Yeah, I think it'll advance the cause of accessibility. The accessibility to me isn't the problem. I don't care if you if you just graze a button and you can do a hyper combo, great. I'm all for it, right? But it's the character doing the hyper combo and the animations you're seeing reflective of someone like me, someone like you, someone like Jared, someone like my daughter plays games with me. I would love for her to, when I'm playing Street Fighter, and I think her name is Kimberly now, in Street Fighter 6.
Yeah.
But I would love for her to have that character selection screen be multiple ladies that are of different, that come from different places, black and otherwise. I would love for that for her. And I think that would do very well for fighting games as an industry, as a whole. You know what I mean? So that's my little soapbox. I'm sorry if I got us off track.
No, it's all good. It's important because, you know what, at the end of the day, this kind of falls under one of the biggest pieces, right? It's just the fighting game culture and the spectacle that is the scene, right? It's community driven. It is from people from all walks of life, you know, where it was really born at, right? And like things like the arcade scene was, you know, there was a certain class of people that would be out there all the time, or would be more available in certain areas that, you know, it grew on, and that's where the culture stemmed from. So why not have that kind of representation in there as well, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I can't even see.
I didn't mean to hope that didn't just go set off people.
You're good. This is why we do these episodes.
Well, I think that like what you're talking about is a part of accessibility, right? Because, you know, one of the things that me and Dre have been talking about is, you know, in terms of like the fighting game community, it's mostly thought of, like when somebody thinks about the fighting game community, they think about competition, and that's usually where it stops. But in reality, the competition is way more. The fighting game community is way more than competition, right? It's also artists, it's cosplayers, it's modders, it's all these people that are, you know, there's some people, like, for example, I don't compete, right? I call myself the greatest spectator in the FGC. I don't compete, you know? You can't come for the champ, you know, come for me. But like, I will play a single player fighting game because I like. So that's why one of the reasons I like Mortal Kombat so much, because it has one of the. I mean, it does have the best single player mode in fighting games. I will say that. So like, there's you get a lot of story there, you get a lot of lore. But even outside of Mortal Kombat, the story and the lore of the characters in other fighting games is really good, and it's really deep, and it's really cool. Like, there was a podcast somebody was doing called like Tekken Lo-Fi, where they were going over the story and the lore.
Oh yeah. They pick certain characters and they go over them, right?
And I actually reached out to him, but I didn't get it. If you listen to this, dude, hit me up. Look for my email, dog. Like, hit us up. Come in the Discord. I want to talk to you. But like, it was a really interesting show, just talking about the background and lore of like Tekken characters and stuff like that. And you could do the same thing for Street Fighter. You could most definitely do the same thing for Guilty Gear. Maybe somebody can actually understand what the fuck is going on in that world. You know what I'm saying?
Dual Rule is coming out April
on Crunchyroll.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like that, like, you know, fighting games has a lot of people, you know, like that. So the community is much larger, and so like, if you're looking at it from that perspective, because of course somebody's going to listen to this and be like, oh, what does being black have to do with the characters and blah, 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 with the competition? And, you know, you're right about that. Being black has nothing to do with competition. You know, when it comes to like actually competing, you're a character kit to me, you know, but like when it comes to like the other stuff around it, like, yeah, I mean, you know, representation matters there. So no, I totally get what you're saying. It is a part of accessibility.
It's a part of it. It's a part of accessibility. It's just a great point. That's a great, I didn't think of it like that specifically, but yeah, it's a part of bringing in like bringing in more audiences, and then respecting the audience that you do have, you know, like just giving, I want characters that look like my uncles and aunts and my cousins, because that's who I played the games with. And it'd be nice to just, you know what I mean? It's just nice to see that.
And when you do see somebody that looks you want it to be more than a stereotype, you know what I'm saying?
We can do more than play basketball and box. Okay?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think real hard. I'm like, yo, we just got Leroy whooping all kinds of ass.
And I was specifically saying African Americans. I know Eddie Gordo is out there. Is Dudley black or is he Indian?
Dudley's black. You got Elena. She coming out in like a couple, like a month.
Like there, I'm not saying like I was saying specifically like the lineage is Balrog. The origin is Balrog, meaning You're black, you're based on a stereotype of a boxer, and even when you press kick buttons, you're punching.
Mike Tyson didn't throw a single kick in the ring, dog. That's just what it is. They just kept doing it.
I'm just saying.
I get what you mean.
Again, it's an optics thing. It's an optics thing.
Yeah.
That's all.
But just to add some weight to your statement, right? Like it's what you tend to get is when it comes to like black characters, they kind of get grouped together, right? Like the difference between somebody from an African country versus African American, even the difference between different African countries is not respected. So, for example, I remember in Overwatch when there were, this was early on, so 2017, 2018, people complaining that there were no black female characters. And the overwhelming response from people in the Overwatch forums, like, well, Symmetra's black. And I'm like, dog.
Oh, that was rough.
It is just kind of like, you know, that response, you just proved their point to him. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and for those who don't know, Symmetra she's Indian. That's what she is, but she has dark skin. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of people view that, oh, black character, dark skin. Like, you guys are all good, right? You guys are all good, right? You know, considering that like the majority of the planet has dark skin, which is actually kind of funny. Yeah. But you know, there's variance there, and what you're looking for is not just the skin color. You're looking for your kind of community represented, or you as a person represented, and of course, you're not looking for it to be super niche. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if they have like an African American or a black person coming out of Cali, they're not going to act like somebody coming out of New York. You know what I'm saying? The differences are there too, but at least at least you can associate it with it more being an American.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of like what. So I get what you're saying. It's yeah.
The only character that I would say is kind of original that I liked was Zach from Dead or Alive. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. He's kind of he's the Dennis Rodman of fighting games.
Yeah, thank you. I was like thinking Wesley Snipes Demolition
Man. That's closer to Raven,
right? Yeah,
that's Raven.
That's more
he's
Raven.
Canadian.
Yeah,
I think I read somewhere that his character is actually Canadian. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I read. I read that.
Lord.
Somebody had to.
Well, not the veer
go ahead. I'm sorry. I am so sorry.
Go check out. No. Just check out the tragedy that is Rufus of Street Fighter 4 and his original design, actually, to what he ended up being.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that one's rough. That one's rough. But to kind of continue moving on, because once again, the spectacle of fighting games, you know, all walks of life. One big thing I wanted to bring up is just like the modern trends, right? The evolution of fighting games. Like fighting games have changed a lot over the years. We've seen everything from easier inputs to rollback netcode and free-to-play models, right? Like, you know, a lot of the modern trends coming through. Do you think these are like necessary to bring in more people, or do you think it's like taken away from like the essence of fighting games? Because it's like what a lot of there's been many people that have had like a back and forth on it. I mean, big picture. I mean, for those that are watching, you already see Jaws' clear answer through his facial expressions. But I gotta pose it out there. Like, do you think these are needed?
I think it's important to keep up with the times. I think that it's just speaking real frank, everybody's trying to keep up with social media. Television programs, movies, everybody's trying to keep up with social media. Social media and that phone and the doom scroll takes up so much of that's what you're competing against. Television shows aren't competing against each other. Video games aren't competing against each other. All entertainment is competing against the doom scroll. That's where I see it at. And I think the more changes get made through the lens of the true competitor, where the most time is being spent, I think that's what needs to be the focus. So to me, in my mind, the ease of access, the ease of controllers, the all of the things to do to make everything more online friendly or digital friendly, DCLs, everything will one day culminate into an experience where you doom scroll and then you stop on a Street Fighter game and play a 60-second match. That's where I see it going. Where you're doom scrolling shit. You're doom scrolling
shit,
and then you run into somebody else doom scrolling And then, hey, would you like to play a match? I like to play a match. You like to play a match? Cool. And then for those 60 seconds, it's you versus somebody on a Street Fighter. We might.
It's kind of like that's like $1 million idea. Just an app. You're like, yo, scroll for looking for a fight.
Listen,
Street Fighter,
this the future.
Match.
I'm not the only person. I'm sure I'm not the only person that came up. I'm saying everybody knows the social media is the ultimate Thanos. That's the bad guy. Not bad guy. That's the dominant force. In wrestling, that's the tribal chief. That's the thing that everybody is competing against. It's not each other. It's not a streaming network. It's not a television studio. It's not a video game. It is for the attention and it's the doom scroll that you are trying to compete against. And again, I think all of the changes that are happening right now, everything that you see, all the configurations of everything will culminate if they do it correctly. Again, it will culminate into I just saw that. I went to a film festival and there's a block for 60-second films. A complete block for 60-second films. And it was the most well received. This is an Oscar qualifying festival. I was just at it in LA. And it was the most well received block of the entire, that and the episodes block were the most well received episodes of blocks of the entire film festival. And part of it is because those 60-second films represented the TikTokification of the landscape. And that's what's good. And again, if I'm looking at it through the lens of a fighting game, if I'm looking at it through the lens of a Capcom, if I'm looking at it through the lens of a Namco Bandai, my goal has to be the longevity of our company.
Yeah, let's listen to what you're saying. See, I think you have to kind of dig a little bit deeper into what even the social media companies are trying to do. And that's they're trying to draw, they want engagement, right? They want eyeballs, and that's why their algorithms work the way they do. One of the things that video games do that like I would say other mediums like podcasts or videos or like movies, TV, stuff like that they have to worry about in terms of keeping the person engaged. Video games don't usually have to worry about that because you're already engaged. At video games, they already kind of keep you engaged when you're in. So their job is just to get you to start it. You know, that's the most difficult part of like right now for me playing games is starting the game, because I know once I start it, I'm locked for hours. You know what I'm saying? Like there is no, like I'm not just gonna hop in, play for 30 minutes, play for 60 minutes. It's like it's gonna be a couple hours. I do have very, very specific games like Tetris Effect I'll play if I know I don't want to get locked in, because I think the longest I think I've had playing Tetris Effect, like one game was like 20 minutes, you know what I'm saying, before like, you know, I lost. So like I'll have games like that, but like some of my other games, like I'm not going to boot up Marvel Rivals, I'm not going to boot up Overwatch, I'm not going to boot up you know, God of War, The Last of Us, because I know I'm there for like hours, you know.
Everything has to evolve. Every change, if there was no social media, I think a lot of the landscape of all forms of entertainment would look vastly, vastly different if it were not for that one key element, the DS, the doom scroll. That's where my mind always goes when there's more changes. Is what dominates people's attention.
So yeah, I mean, I think it would evolve, but definitely differently. But in terms of video games have always had an evolution, but people only remember from the point that they started, right? Like I hear people complain about, I remember when games were good, like with Modern Warfare and blah blah blah, and games used to be hard. I'm like, dog, are you serious? Yeah. That like, so for those who don't know, if you started playing shooters with Modern Warfare, like Call of Duty 4, that game was on crutches. That game was succeeded because of accessibility. Like that's why that game blew up. Like just to give a little history, like, so I think you mentioned earlier about how games weren't cool like in the 80s and the 90s, and even in the early 2000s, like being like the way gamers are accepted now, like that wasn't the case even in the early 2000s. it was that Xbox 360 PS3 generation and the catalyst, and you can argue with me on this, was Modern Warfare. That Xbox Live plus Call of Duty Modern Warfare, it was the first time a Call of Duty game was the same across all platforms. That flipped the switch that had people who weren't playing games. The fact that sports games were now looking super realistic. People that never bought a console were buying a console to play NBA 2K. People started playing Madden. My brother has never played a video game in his life, had an Xbox 360 just for Forza. You know?
Just for who?
So like that.
Just for what?
Just for Forza.
Forza.
Just for Forza.
Wow.
You know? So like that whole generation, like that, like, and that flipped that, like when that was received well, that's when the era of accessibility really, really started. From then on, the entire industry was looking for ways to make games more accessible. You know, for example, like, you know, difficulty levels. There's 5 difficulty levels now in mini games. If you're playing, like, whatever the hard difficulty is, that used to be normal. Normal is what used to be easy. And I'm not shitting on anybody for, like, playing on normal or even easy. I think you should play games whatever difficulty level you need. But it is making the games themselves more accessible.
What you just mentioned there about like difficulty levels and being able to change and play with it whatever you want. People, there's a resentment factor there that holds. So if you play a game that there's very easy, medium, very hard, extremely hard, right? And somehow your status playing I know they do this with Madden, and I know they do it with the new college football game. There's these levels, and I don't know all the different names for those levels, but there are these different levels, and if you're playing the game at a lower level than the highest possible difficulty, then somehow, again, this is that treehouse mentality. Somehow you're less than, or somehow you're not a true gamer, a true person within that game, a true fan of that game or something, because you're not playing it quote unquote as either as intended, which is like, well, they put those difficulties in there, so it's intended, you know, it's as right, intended. Yeah. I remember it was something similar that happened with Dead or Alive. It wasn't with difficulties, it was with certain physical mechanics within Dead or Alive, if you catch my drift. Certain upper body physical mechanics that you could,
we could say breast physics on this podcast.
You could turn.
It's all good. I've said
that
worse.
You could turn up. You remember you could do it on the Dreamcast when you could turn it up and down.
Yeah.
To see how much bounce you would get. Same thing happened with Mortal Kombat. And there was one of the earlier Mortal Kombat games. I don't know if it was Ultimate. I don't know if it was 3. Might even been 2, where you could turn up and down the blood. And it was and doing so was thought of as you're not respecting the game, or you're not playing the game as intended somehow. When those options, you're putting, it's almost like a kid putting training wheels on his bike.
Yeah, I don't know. At that point, that gets I feel like that's extremist in certain circles, but I don't think that's like the majority at times. Because at the end of the day, it's just what is accepted by the community, or what the community states. Like you said, treehouse rules, right? It isn't like not always the vast. Sometimes it is. Sometimes weird rules like that apply, and I'm like, all right, cool. Like, you know, but that's where you know, that's the beauty of it, is that you could still be, you know, standing around and be like, well, is there a competitive reason for that?
Yeah.
Like, if so, yes, got it. Like maybe the blood had to be turned off for, I think, if I can recall, either it was 9 or 10 in MK, just because they didn't want the amount of particles that was going on could potentially drop the frame rate a little bit, and they want to keep it at an optimal rate. So like, hey, these are the rules you must apply to, because we just want to ensure the playing field is correct across any competition.
It's almost like what happens in Smash Brothers, and you establish an items rule. You know?
Yeah, Final Destination, no items, 3 stocks, see me there, right? Like it that just became the rite of passage to make it happen.
Like a Waffle House order. That's awesome. The way you
I know, right?
That out there.
But that's how it be. That's how serious it would get. Which is what's funny. We were talking so much about shooters, and yet, for me, I always take this as like for fighting games being at the core of, other games. It's like whenever you're playing a team shooter, whenever you actually do have a back and forth with someone, say that was on the other team, what's usually the ultimatum to kind of make sure you put the point across as to who's better. Yo, 1v1 me right here, this map, let's go right now. There's gonna be no distractions. Your homeboy's not gonna freaking flank for you. Like, let's see who really is better.
Yep.
Right? Like that at the core, I'm like, damn, that's fighting game talk right there. That's what I like to see. That's what I like to hear. And that's what's engraved in anything competitive, which is why I think fighting games are just that special. Because at the core, that's all it is.
I second that, man. I do. I would add on, would you think less of me if I
yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll just throw it out there. You think less of me? I am not as like, I have this behind me and I like this game. So I love it.
Sam Show is the purist. Sam Show is for the purest of the purists when it comes to fighting, because this isn't about the most flashy for combos. No, it's about who's gonna make the first move, who's going to see the first mistake, who's going to capitalize. And you don't get like a little chunk. No, literally the people who made Homeboy right there, Haomaru, they live for the days where they get that one counter hit on a heavy, and they're like, there goes 60%. Let me super. I just killed you in 2 hits or 1. Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. There is just an evolution as to how we've been able to ingrain these core pieces of what is a fighting game into all these extra things, whether it's your X factors, your team games, your tags, your ratios, your isms, right? Shout out to CVS too, right? Like, all of that. At the end of the day, fighting games are like a conversation. Sometimes it's a respectful exchange. Sometimes it's an argument. Sometimes it's a chess match. But no matter what, they always tell a story.
The reason I was going to ask that is because you can get somebody out of there with 1 hit, and some people don't consider that like a fight. And I love that. For those that once again want to see it in the purest of form and kind of be on accessibility, do it right here on your phone. Go and check out an app called Footsies. It's made by a couple of people, but then the main person you'll see is called High Fight. It takes everything away from it's nothing crazy graphically. It's just 2 characters. I think there's maybe a little bit of music, nothing too crazy, but you get 3 potential hits that you can have. It's 1v1. You got 99 seconds, and your goal is to play the simple rules of footsying your opponent. And you only have 1 button to press. Depending on the range, you're either whiff punishing, you're countering, or you're just straight up getting a clean hit. That's it. Rinse and repeat. There's ranked on it. Go check it out. It's free to play. And if you just want to dip your toe in, that's where I would recommend. But I have one final question I gotta give to you. What is your favorite thing about fighting games, and why do you think they'll never die? Loaded question.
It's technically 2 questions, but you know what I mean.
My favorite thing about fighting games is getting to connect with it, getting a primal connection. Fighting is a primal thing. Connecting with another person through combat is a primal thing. And I think we can learn. That's what Tales of Fists and Fireballs is. It's being able to connect with your opponent at a primal level, at your core, your most human core level. It happens in stories. It happens in competition. It happens with friends and family. That's the one thing about fighting games that can unite every level, casual, competitive, and every which way in between. That you are connecting, you're making a human connection that is very much something that existed since the dawn of time, which is you against your fellow man. That's the answer to the first question. What was the second question?
And do you think fighting games will ever die?
I don't think fighting games will die. I do think fighting games, it's ironic. I don't think fighting games will ever die because we're always fighting about fighting games.
Yeah.
So yeah, there it is. We'll always be fighting about fighting games, thereby giving it its energy.
So someone will always argue about being better,
or a fighting game
always
being
going to be there.
A fighting game.
Yeah, I can agree with that to a degree. See, the thing about fighting games, I feel like they've been insulated, right? But in terms of in terms of the games industry, right? Like, they've been made the same way for a very long time. There hasn't been a ton of evolution of fighting games after, I want to say, because during the 90s, we had a lot of evolution in fighting, right?
Yeah.
But after that,
things, seeing what worked.
Yeah, exactly. But after that, you haven't had a ton of evolution. Of course, you've had these changes, but if you take a look at what happens when shooters exploded, shooters before the explosion and after are almost unrecognizable. You can't really find it. I think Halo might be one of the last arena shooters. Splitgate, I think. Yeah, Splitgate.
Splitgate
is another one, but you're really not finding a bunch of them. And I think if fighting games has an explosion like shooters did in the mid 2000s, you'll still have fighting games, but they may be less recognizable to what you have now. I'm sorry, but just introducing the current group of people who play shooters to arena shooters, you're gonna lose them. It's considerably, there's much more to manage. They're too difficult to play. There's nobody to blame. There's no catch up mechanics, if you want to call it that, or no leveling mechanics in terms of helping you out. It's pure skill. And I think as fighting games continue to evolve, they're gonna find ways to make it more accessible at the lower levels so that you can get into it, but still keep the strategy and complexity at the higher levels, which is essentially kind of what you're looking at. Rising Thunder died so 2XKO could live. But one of the things I liked about Rising Thunder was that, you didn't have to worry about the mechanical aspect of it, but you still had to worry about the strategic aspect of it. You could do a one button press to do an ability that used meter or something like that. But if you press it at the wrong time, it would, you would just whiff or get blocked, and now you're open. So you still got to worry about the strategic aspect of it. And I think we're going to continue to see that evolve the more popular fighting games get. And for some people, 2XKO is going to be a blessing, and for other people, 2XKO might be a curse, because if it's successful, fighting games, I don't think will be the same after the fact.
So fighting games have evolved from, one-on-one battles to the complex showcases of esports events, but competition is still at its core, can still be defined in many different ways. But I want to say thank you very much for Aaron for coming through. Mr. Aaron David Harris, nominated on the show. Make sure to check him out. Aaron, the floor is yours. Tell them what you're doing, where they can find you at.
First, thank you guys so much at Double Tap. You guys are now basically my family, my brothers now in this fighting game community, in this fighting game life. Thank you so much for having me back. Thank you for letting me promote my audio fiction anthology, Tales of Fists and Fireballs, available wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Audible, wherever. It is nominated for what's called an AMBI, which is the Podcast Academy Awards for Best Fiction Podcast. I'm up against some really stiff competition. So while it's up mostly to the Academy voters, you guys can still play a part by just letting people know about the show and what you think of it. Particularly if you're into fighting games, or you're into that one-on-one that we were talking about. That's what I emphasize. If you're into the storylines that are being told in fighting games and feel like they're a little underrated or a little bit behind the shadows and not getting their due, this is an opportunity for you to share with somebody, hey, there's this podcast out there that actually puts the spotlight on the kinds of stories that I like to ingest as a fighting game player, as a member of the fighting game community. So you can find me on Instagram at Aaron David Harris. You can find me on my website at adhx2.com. That's where all of my projects are, including this humbling nominated program called Tales of Fists and Fireballs. So again, thank you all so much for having me. Thank you so much.
All love. Doors always open to a fellow fighting game enthusiast, lover, or enjoyer of the culture. that's at the end of the day is what we do it for. But thank you for giving us the time. Thank you for letting us have you on. Like to also thank Ja for hanging out, of course. Always the voice of reason behind every episode, every show, every round, every bonus round, everything that goes on here for Double Tap. You can find him at Josh Stradamus on Blue Sky.
That is correct. Yeah, it's still Josh Stradamus.
I always wait for the confirmation.
It's joshstradam.us because I'm special.
Oh,
yeah.
He's a special guy. You can find me at Crashtag VS on Twitter or X, but make sure to follow the show at Double Tap FGC on all social media platforms, YouTube, Blue Sky. Of course, we've got our Discord as well. You guys can check out. We'll be posting this up alongside things like our awesome podcast that we do every 2 weeks. Make sure to check out there. In the meantime, though, make sure to like and comment below on the video. But more specifically, if you want to comment anything, I want to hear from you. What's your favorite thing about fighting games, and why do you think they'll never die? Let us know. Once again, we appreciate for Aaron for coming through. Hopefully he'll be the winner. We'll be on for the third time and we can talk more shop. But until then, appreciate y'all for hanging with us, and we'll see y'all on the next video.
Peace.
Peace.